Ladies and gentlemen, this is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And once again, we are honored to have Steve Silbiger back with us. Right? So he has been on our show many times. Interestingly, he is the author of the international bestseller, the 10-Day MBA, and the fifth edition is coming in July. Steve, welcome
Hello.
back. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Thank you for having me. We talked about different things for the 10-Day MBA and just general good stuff, about pursuing, you know, your business or your dreams or what have you. So I'm glad to be able to let people on the knowledge from the United States, from the top business school, and it's the most affordable, you know, business school that you'll ever have. That's for sure. And so after, since 2012, it's been obviously about 10 years since I updated it, and it was delayed because of COVID, but it's totally updated all the way through. New topics, revised topics, and now it's in a blue cover, so it looks different than the old cover. But I'm very proud of it, and I know tonight you want to talk about the gig economy, and that's a section that's new in the book because 12 years ago it didn't really exist. So there you go.
Yeah. So, what is meant by the gig economy?
Oh, what's med, but as opposed to getting a job and showing up to work every day, and that it's no longer that anymore. It's you're working on a task, you're working on a project, and so you're not tied permanently to the company. That's what a gig job is. And since technology has changed so much, it's not only just working on projects, the technology of the iPhone and what have you. You have Uber, which is part of the gig economy. You have Etsy, where you can make your own crafts and have your own business. So the technology has allowed this to happen. Before, what used to happen is people used to work for a company maybe on a part-time basis, on a project basis, but it wasn't a main way of structuring the workforce. But now it's extremely that way, and as opposed to having the company control your time, your efforts, and you control your own time. You're in control of what you want to do, although there's pluses and there are minuses to both, and we can discuss that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So now, since of late, like towards the end of, like let's say mid of 2023 or towards the end of 2023, many CEOs were asking their staff to come back to office, and it's still going on. But some
Yes.
staff are feeling uncomfortable because of the like the work from home and in person. So, what do you think about that?
Well, I during the deepest COVID, my
Yeah.
small company, I went in every day. I did
Okay.
not stay home. But
Okay.
we're a small company where I work at, and
Mm.
somebody had to be there to write checks, sign
Mm.
checks. They're physical things that had to be done.
Yeah.
But there had to be a change in the mental framework
Mm.
of managers and companies to trust if somebody's working at home, they're actually working for you.
Mm.
And that's a huge leap that was forced on companies and executives that during COVID. And in this case, they were forced to do it. And sure enough, people worked at home. They
Yeah.
just didn't, play and not work. And their company survived and thrived, uh, even in this case. And it's a permanent part of the work life now. Even in our company, there's a couple of people, because of their work, uh, they have some family obligations. They
Mm.
work from home 1 or 2 days a week. Uh,
Yeah.
Another person in our company uh, wanted to move to Florida, not Pennsylvania, and
Okay.
somebody else is with her as well, and they're working very efficiently from
Wow.
Florida, no longer from their office.
Yeah.
So I totally get, it's been a revolution, and
Mm.
people still do their work even though they're not in the office.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's a change of mindset, but it was forced on everybody during COVID. Otherwise, businesses wouldn't work. But going back to work now, obviously, there's no medical issues of going back to work. But
Mm.
people have obligations at home, maybe taking care of somebody else, a
Mm.
child or what have you, with daycare. I have a person who creates our websites,
Yeah.
and she works from home all days of the week, and she also takes care of her children as well.
Wow.
So, you know, obviously some jobs you can do at home, but others ones you can't. And there's upsides to it and there's downsides. If you One of the downsides is that you're not trained like working in the office from somebody with
Mm.
the established knowledge. They don't
Yeah.
get to know you as well,
Yeah.
so promotions are more difficult because they don't
Mm.
really know who you are.
Correct.
uh, there's less loyalty to the company
Mm.
because you're not at this, you don't have established a personal relationship with the people that you work with. And
Yes.
then all the interactions that you just take for granted in the office and things that you overhear of a conversation, that does not happen when you're working remotely. And in my business, it's very collaborative. So you might hear, because it's a smaller business, you might hear something from accounting or finance, or somebody might have a conversation about something legal or a new inventor, or
Mm.
everybody is kind of hearing everybody else's conversation, and they share information. And that
Yeah.
sharing of information uh, in a remote setting doesn't really work. It really doesn't, because everything has to be planned. It's
Yeah.
you're so over the long period, I think it's going to be a negative, but on the short term, it still works.
Mm.
Like, for instance, the other positive piece is that instead of only being able to recruit really somebody locally or have them
Yeah.
move to your area, you have the entire world of talent that you can tap.
Mm.
That's a positive. You know, you don't need a large office anymore. You know, you don't have to have, you know, other amenities and that type of thing of an office and rent. And you don't have to drive to work. You don't have to pay tolls. You don't have to burn fossil fuels to get to
Yeah.
your work. So there's many things that are involved there, and there's pluses and minuses to each. And
Correct.
that it's changed. And you know, the whole idea, if you're totally independent, I mean, you sometimes don't get health benefits. You're on
Mm.
your own taking care of your health benefits or retirement or what have. You're on your own. But the next day you could say, I don't want to work for you anymore, and go find
Mm.
somebody else. Or if you want to, and you ask your employer for an increase in pay, or you could, recruit through other jobs, and
Mm.
change jobs for better pay, because you're not as loyal to that company, and they're not as
Yeah.
loyal to you. um,
Mm.
there's a lot of different things. And say you want to be flexible as a company, and you don't want to take somebody in, you could have them as a gig worker on a specific project, and
Yeah.
not be responsible for that person's health benefits and everything. You get the job
Mm.
done, and then you assemble a new team. So there's pluses and minuses.
Right. Wow, very insightful, Steve. Okay, right. Now, how is this skills-based hiring transforming the workforce?
Well, because of the gig economy, and you have a specific project, it's you're hiring skills. You're not hiring
Mm.
people anymore. So
Mm.
I might like you personally, and I have to think about your career and how you would be promoted and that type of thing. But if you have a project and you're a good coder and you're working on a specific project is done and you're gone, I don't have to train you because you've already been trained by somebody else.
Yeah.
So the skills are what are most important, not the other aspects of the person, because they're temporarily with you.
Mm.
Yes. So I think it's become a more skills oriented and results oriented relationship. And before, there was more of a relationship in the old world before gig economy, or like we have here, Teams or Zoom or any of those technologies that if they did not exist, this could not happen. You know, the whole idea of working remotely or using Slack or
Mm.
versus other collaborative software that allows people to work on a project. The technology, fortunately, was there when COVID hit. If it didn't, it would be much more difficult.
Very, very true. So now it's going to be a big talk. Okay, this thing, the gig economy. What are the disadvantages you see?
Okay, I'm going to look at my little notes here. Like
Sure.
the disadvantages of the gig economy is a kind of it you you don't get benefits if you're working on a gig basis, which in the United States, there's no national health care. So you're
Mm.
responsible for your own health care,
Yeah.
which is a huge thing. Healthcare in the United States, health insurance costs about $20,000 a person in the
On
United States.
on average.
On average, yes.
Wow.
You
Wow.
can get less expensive coverage, but then you're responsible for a lot of your bills. So, but
Wow.
it's very expensive. Um, the other is your work culture, like in different companies where you try to teach employees on how we do things, how we
Mm.
treat other people. You really don't have a true work culture developed as you would in larger companies and more established companies, because they don't see each other all the time, which is important. I mean, you don't have to be as kind to somebody because you don't see them. I mean, the relationship's more task oriented, skill
Mm.
oriented. um, if you're a gig worker, your income goes up and down based off
Mm.
you've been, how much you're employed. You
Yeah.
might have periods where you're not employed because you're working on a project by project basis.
Correct.
Uh, Work scheduling is tough
Mm.
because if you're working on a gig basis, something could come up and you have to take that job immediately or else they're going
Mm.
on to somebody else. So you have to manage your life more accurately with more variability, so to speak. Um, Also, career development as a gig
Mm.
worker, your career is up to you. There's no company, there's no job, there's no
Mm.
real future, uh,
Mm.
as in the olden days where you would say, hey, well, if I'm doing this now, in the future, I'll work my way up in the company. They'll train me. You're responsible for your own training because that's
Yeah.
who you are. That's why you're working in a gig economy. Uh, it's just simple, like Uber, being an Uber driver. I mean,
Mm.
at the most simple basis, you control your own hours, but
Yeah.
you have to pay your own expenses. Or
Yeah.
or if you have a little business on Etsy, you're creating handicrafts and your own artwork or whatever. And that's your time. You figure it out. You market your own business. You're
Mm.
not working for a larger company. So
Yeah.
the onus of your success, the responsibility for your own success is in you, not in the company. You really control
Mm.
your own destiny.
True.
And I think I covered it all. You're responsible for your own personal development. Uh,
Yeah.
and like say you're and the other thing I alluded to is, you know, your training at normal positions in the old economy is you were trained by your company to perform the tasks that they need.
Mm.
Here,
Mm.
they're going to find the people that have that training to perform the tasks that they want.
Yeah.
And then when they're done with you, you're done. You go on to
Yeah.
your next job, or they hire another person. Uh, Another negative to a company is, on the negative side, they have to constantly be recruiting new people
Mm.
into the company. And if they don't, those people leave. And if you're bad to those people, they can leave immediately. You know,
Yeah.
they're not responsible to you. So the relationship, the power in the relationship isn't always with the employer. The employee
Mm.
has that power.
Wow. Okay.
Uh-huh. I'm just thinking some other things I wrote down.
Sure.
Uh, you know, like like insurance. Like corporate responsibility is a company who hires you and say you do a poor job. The company is responsible for your work, but if you're a bad person and commit crimes while you're doing it,
Mm.
is the company really responsible for
Mm.
that employee for what they do while they're
Yeah.
working on your project? If they
Mm.
were your employee, the company is responsible for the acts of their employees. But if you're a gig worker and not an employee, is the company responsible for your activities? It's a gray
Mm.
area. It matters. It matters a lot, actually.
Yeah. Wow. Super. Super info. Yeah. Yes, Steve.
Okay. No, what's the next question? Sorry.
All right, super insightful, right? So yeah, so now based on your experience, right, Steve? So became a best-selling author, right? And this book is
Yes.
a international bestseller that has been
Yeah.
translated into at least a dozen languages. What is the message,
Yeah.
final message you will give for people who face rejection?
My final message for people who are writers or for,
No, no, who face rejection.
face rejection. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, this book, after selling 650,000 copies, the
Yeah.
I had sent my book to at least 20 some odd publishers, and all of them rejected the book. I think all of the 20, only 3 of them favored me with a
Mhm.
rejection letter. They were
Yeah.
mostly just rejected by not answering. And those 3 people decided to send me a form letter. We're not interested. But I
Mm.
didn't give up.
Yeah.
And then what the way that I found, I was doing some volunteer work, and there was an author giving a seminar on creativity. And after his presentation, his lecture, I went and asked him, "How did you get your book published?" And he said, "I didn't, my agent did." And in that case, my agent is Rafe Segalin, but his agent was Rafe Segalin. And I asked him,
Mm.
"Oh, can you give me your agent's number, his
Yeah.
information?" And he was generous enough to give me that information. And I took advantage of that. And he gave me, that connection. But even with that great connection and that great opportunity, I had a product, a book that was really good that I believed in. And I knew would be super useful to a lot of people. And
Yeah.
so agent saw what I saw, and he sold the book to William Morrow, which is HarperCollins now. And he sold that within the same week because, it does address a huge need, and a lot of people need this information about this book. And the whole idea is if you think you have something amazing and that's needed, the rejection that you will first hear, you got to push through it. You got to push through it
Yeah.
and pursue not only the conventional means, but your connections, personal connections, while you're out in the marketplace or in your current life. Like the conventional way to sell a book is you write a bunch of these letters to agents or publishers, and it's a one-page letter called the query, and they say, I like it, I don't like it. And you're in a big stack of query letters for inquiry letters. But through a personal connection, you hop over that stack and you get immediate attention because you have a connection, a personal connection with somebody. And even, and as I said, the connection could only take you so far. But if you have a really good product or a good book or an idea or what have you, taking advantage of those connections and learning from other people allows things to be successful. And I do that all the time in my current work during the day. I find new products. Some of those inventors will contact me directly, or they find other ways to get to me, or we find them. But it's always a web of connections that bring people together successfully. It doesn't work being passive about it. And you got to face failure. Most people will say no, but it takes that one yes that makes it all happen. I look at maybe 100 products or more a week, and
Wow.
I may find only one product that I think is good enough for us every 2 to 3 months. So imagine that. So you got to keep it, have to keep on trying and working it. But you have to listen through the process. Through the rejections, you're going to hear feedback that may be super helpful to make maybe that idea that you had needs to be changed. And you're hearing the marketplace that maybe your idea needs to be changed or altered or a different plan. That have to be open because that's the way it is. So I'm not
Correct.
saying to continue to pursue a bad idea after you've vetted it through this process, but keep up, maybe that one idea or business idea isn't the right one because you've learned something else. But every time you learn more and more, and you have a better perspective for the next idea.
Yeah.
Uh, I currently am writing some children's books.
Wow.
Okay. And what my
Awesome.
agent really likes about me, and she tries to sell them to publishers, that I'm constantly creating new things because some things will be successful and some won't. And so as long as you're in the game and pursuing your dream of whatever it is, uh, you're a winner. You're a winner. It's better than sitting back and crying about it. It's better to be in the game working towards something. It makes your life much more happy and fulfilled as opposed to resigning. Oh, things aren't working out. They'll never work out. I'll never amount to anything. I'll never do well. But if you're in the game, you have a chance. You have a chance. If you're doing nothing, there's no chance. Zero chance.
Yeah.
And I see the way that you operate. You're always in it. You're interviewing new people. You're
Yeah.
always on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
pursuing people, testing out new ideas, and that's the way it works. You know,
Mm.
this idea, when I first had that idea,
Yeah.
people, this one guy who was a famous writer said, of all the books that get written, 5%, only 5% get published. Of
Yeah.
the
Wow.
5%, okay, it's probably less now. And of the
Yeah.
5% of the 5% sell a significant number of copies that do
Mm.
well. Most of them do not do well. And so I told them way back when I first started with the first book, I said, not only will I find a publisher to publish my book, it's going to sell really well. And when it
Mm.
does, I'm calling you with
Yeah.
that result. And sure, that
Yeah.
was a sweet day. That was a sweet day in my life where I
Yeah.
could tell them, yep, we sold it. And by the way, my book has sold way more than your book has ever sold. And it's still
Wow.
alive to this day. This book has been
Yeah.
alive, so to speak, for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
So people like it. People use the book. I get
Mm.
emails from around the world, like
Mhm.
yourself,
Yeah.
and they find it very useful because they can't go back to business school or spend $250,000, but they can
Mm.
learn really what the building blocks of business are in a
Yeah.
very straightforward manner.
Correct.
And I'm very proud of it, but I know it works. The marketplace has said yes. If a book is a good book, it comes, it goes. People talk about it for a year, but this has been around for almost 30 years, but it's now in
Mm.
the fifth edition, and every time it gets better. And every time I redo the book, I update it, not just from me, what I
Mm.
know. I talk to new students at top 10 business schools, and they tell me, oh, this has changed. You should add this. This could be clearer. And that's what I've done. And it's a solid piece of work that I know will work out for your audience.
Yeah.
Well worth
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. So the book covers a step-by-step method, right? And it teaches key theories, right? So amazing, Steve, amazing. So sometimes when I travel, this book, the hard copy which I have, I pack it, right, and I go. So I read this book, certain chapters and all, right. So I like the economics chapter in the previous version, right? So amazing, right? So Steve, yeah.
It was funny. A couple of weeks ago, I was in New York, and friends of ours, we were just talking, and they really didn't know that about my publishing. And this guy who is a lawyer, a successful lawyer,
Okay.
said he was reading this book, this 10-day MBA book, and he didn't realize it was me who wrote the book.
Wow.
Yeah, I have been on a subway in New York City where people were with my book going to NYU Business School. I have
Wow.
been in Philadelphia where somebody was reading the book on the train in going to Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania. So people use the book, even people in the business schools use the book to summarize and understand easier how it works. I had something that came up just recently. It related to a statistical study about a new product and its success. And they were talking about statistical p values and what have you. And somebody else in the conversation says, I'm not really familiar with that. And I said, in my book, I cover that in a couple of pages so you could
Mm.
understand this too. And statistics is in that chapter of quantitative analysis, and it's very easy to figure out. It's not something that you want to stay away from. None of it. Finance, is explained. Economics, accounting, all those things are covered in a very simple way that you understand it, just like they teach you in business school. And that's
Mm.
that's what that's what it is.
Amazing,
Yeah,
amazing. And the final part is a very inspiring one, Steve, the way you said how you faced rejection and how strongly you overcame it, right? So
Yes.
really inspiring. So so
And, I asked you before, I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, 10-Day MBA, and you could always contact me or send me a instant message or what have you. I, there's an email address, 10daymba at gmail.com. So I hear from my readers all the time, and not just about the book, about their businesses, new products that they come up with, advice about maybe going back to business school. So I'm open to your people, to your listeners. And I'm glad that I've had the opportunity tonight to talk to you. It's obviously morning over your
yeah.
place. So
Yeah, great. So Steve, thank you
yes,
very much
very
for taking
much.
time and doing this podcast with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. All righty. Take care.
You too.